What's up, everybody? Welcome in. It is Iowa Hawkeyes Primetime Live. We are your hosts. I'm Josh Elmer, and of course, Zach Heine is alongside as well. And I guess let's not bury the lead off the top. I think we have the latitude to say that you will be joining Iowa at the Voice of College Football. Mark, Chris, etc. If I'm overstepping the out of bounds line here, I apologize, but cat's out of the bag, so to speak. But Zach, welcome aboard and good evening, my friend.
Yeah, I appreciate it, Josh. I had a meeting earlier today with the Voice of College Football, and I'm going to be joining in some former capacity. We're still ironing out some of those details and appearances and shows I'll be on, but excited to be joining on a more regular occurrence going forward. That's really exciting for me to be able to talk Iowa athletics, and we're officially under a month away from Iowa football's season opener against Albany. So we're almost to the dog days of the off season, and the fall is imminent, and I'm so excited.
No kidding. It's been that summer grind, but we've made it through,
Yep.
baby. Summer camp, fall camp, I should say, not summer camp, fall camp underway in Iowa City. So what are the big questions from fall camp? That's a topic we will be tackling tonight. Position battles, that's probably kind of the same conversation when you say, hey, what are you most curious about in fall camp? You're probably diving into some of the position battles as well. Let's see, the blue chip ratio. In my last episode, Zach, somebody jumped into the comments and pointed out, they said, hey, do you know what the blue chip ratio is? Mm-hmm. And to that commenter, yes, I am familiar with the book of Bud Elliott. I know the blue chip ratio, and it's interesting, right? I think that takes us into a natural progression of, okay, what are expectations for Iowa football? Is winning a national championship an expectation that you have out there for Iowa football? So we can play hot potato a little bit on that tonight with the blue chip ratio. Plus, still plenty more from Big Ten Media Days. We will be Logan Jones heavy tonight on the program, Iowa Hawkeyes Primetime Live. A couple of interesting cuts. This is, I find, Zach, often the case. Offensive linemen tend to be some of the livelier personalities at times on a football team. And I think Logan Jones certainly he fits that capacity for Iowa. So that'll be fun to share some of that with you tonight. And a lot of Iowa basketball discussion and whatever else the chat wants to get into this evening. But it is Iowa Hawkeyes Primetime Live. We are your host this evening. I'm Josh Elmer. He is Zach Heine. And we, of course, the dominant duo now, one of them on Iowa at the Voice of College Football. But we're also teammates at HawkeyesWire.com. So please check out his work and my work, HawkeyesWire.com, and make it a regular morning read for you. Just get into the habit of going right to the website, HawkeyesWire.com. Okay, let's dive right in. Good evening, everyone. Welcome into Iowa Hawkeyes Primetime Live. The big question of the night to open: what are the big fall camp questions that you all have? What does Iowa need to answer in fall camp? And I think, Zach, there's a couple of obvious position groups that you could look at for the Hawkeyes. But when I say, okay, hey, what's the biggest camp question for Iowa? What's the first item that comes to mind for you?
For me, it's the linebacking group, just because of what you lost from last year's team. Jay Higgins and Nick Jackson were, probably one of the best linebacker duos, not just in the Big Ten, but in the entire country. They were an incredible duo for Iowa last year, and you lose both of those guys, and you're not bringing back a whole lot of starting experience to that room. So I want to see kind of who stands out. It's one of those rooms where you don't really have I'm sure Kirk Ferentz and Phil Parker have guys that they want to pencil in right now as starters, but hence the word pencil. You're not writing in pen. That can easily be changed if someone has a strong camp. Looking at the spring depth chart, if someone like a Jaden Montgomery has a strong camp, could he beat out Jaden Harrow? I think that's something that could for sure happen. Derek Weiskopf, I apologize if I got that name wrong, but he was a former top recruit for Iowa. That's someone who could, work his way into some playing time too. So it's a room that doesn't really have too many entrenched starters that you're going to write down right now and be like, these guys are going to be on the field, snap one against Albany. So I'm really curious to see who kind of breaks out in that room, who has a strong camp and potentially earns a bigger role because of that.
And is there somebody that isn't named Jaden Harrell, Carson Shire, that can emerge into that group and be a legitimate player for the Hawkeyes? I think that kind of as an underneath component of that umbrella of a question at linebacker. Does anybody that's not named Harrell or Shire, can they be a legitimate player for the Hawkeyes this season? Can they be a part of that legitimate position battle? I think that's an interesting question. To your point for Iowa, if you on linebacker in production, you're losing a lot with Jay Higgins, who was fantastic, with Nick Jackson, who was over the course of a couple of seasons very, very steady, very good for the Hawkeyes. Iowa is 63rd, according to ESPN's SP Plus returning production rankings. That is a mouthful to say. And what does it mean? It means that Iowa, according to the metrics that they put together, they rank 63rd nationally, right? Just to simplify it, dumb it down a little bit, Iowa's 63rd in terms of returning production. And oh, by the way, defensively, they're 88th on that list. So that's even, way further back from that 63rd ranking. They're 88th nationally in returning production defensively. And Zach, a large part of that is because look, Jay Higgins and Nick Jackson are moving on. So I think that's a reasonable direction to look at. Left tackle, right? You're protecting the quarterback, protecting Gronowski, and you lose a longtime starter there in Mason Richmond. So I think left tackle is an obvious question that needs to be answered for Iowa. And it sounds like we'll share it for you in just a little bit from Logan Jones, but he's at least selling that this is a 4-person race at left tackle for Iowa. It was kind of maybe thought, Zach, that you're looking at Trevor Lauk and Dotzler, and okay, they went and got George. Cannon Leonard was the other name that Logan Jones was trying to toss into that mix for the left tackle battle. So, but look, if it's a 2-horse race, if it's a 3-person position battle, if it is indeed a 4-player position battle at left tackle, that's a massive question for this Iowa football team.
Yeah, and you have to think, one out of those 4 players is going to at least turn into a quality left tackle, you would hope. Cannon Leonard's an interesting player for me, sophomore, redshirt sophomore. He was a 3-star recruit out of high school. He's 6'9", so a massive, massive guy there on the offensive line. Could he? I had him as my projected backup right tackle, my offensive line preview, but obviously tackles we've seen switch right to left, pretty easily. And I think he's a guy that could definitely slot into that left tackle spot if he's able to beat out a Dotzler or a Lauk. But the left tackle spot's the one spot on that line that is a question mark. You have Bo Stevens, who's, in my opinion, one of the most underrated players on this Iowa team, someone who doesn't really get a lot of the respect, with Jones and Dunker on the offensive line getting all the preseason hype. Bo Stevens was another Hawkeye named to that Shrine Bowl 1000 list earlier this week. And so he's someone that is pretty steady on that offensive line. And then Cade Pieper at right guard is, he won the hay bale toss, and that got some headlines, but he's someone I think Hawkeye fans are pretty high on going in that right guard into his sophomore season. And so left tackle is that one spot on the line where you just have a lot of questions, and that's the blind, protecting the blind side for Mark Gronowski. It's going to be super important, especially because a lot of teams in the Big Ten some really good pass rushers. I'm thinking automatically going to Penn State, and Dennis Sutton is back. Denida Sutton, I think is his name. He's a stud at a pass rusher, so he'd probably be lining up against that left tackle in their matchup. And so I think obviously that position is huge. And I wanted to jump real quickly back to the linebacker room because Sebastian Castro played in that cash role kind of. So he was he wasn't a linebacker technically, but he was down there closer to a linebacker than the back end of the secondary in terms of where he played at, and he's gone this year, and so they're going to have to replace that production too. So I think really left tackle and linebacker are the ones that we're going to have to see who wins those battles in camp, and then ultimately it'll come down to how they perform in the regular season. Albany for sure, but Iowa State is the game that I'm really looking at to see how those players perform.
Look at you rocking the Indiana Fever gear tonight, by the way.
I
buried the lead.
After the big win last night, and still no Caitlin Clark, no timetable for her return, but it's probably for the best. Those groin injuries are tricky to deal with, and she's already been in and out of the lineup a bunch this season. So if you really just want to be able to get her fully healthy for a playoff run. But yeah, that was a fun game last night.
Big win. They're on a little bit of a roll here now.
Big win, yeah, and
3 in a row.
Some controversy as well with DeWanna Bonner returning to Indiana for the first time, and she received some boos from the home crowd. So there was some controversy about all of that, but we can discuss that at a later date. But yeah, the Fever are kind of rolling right now on a 3-game winning streak, and they'll head to Dallas tomorrow night to try and keep that going.
We don't have to spend a ton of time on this, but some of the WNBA players at times, do you want to be in the spotlight or not? Because if you want to be in the spotlight, guess what? When you make controversial decisions about to stay or to go, those come with repercussions from fan bases at times. Welcome to professional sports. Welcome to big league sports. Do you want to be in the spotlight or not? Because if you don't, then, hey, everybody can get paid less, and it can be, the unprofitable league that it has been for years and years and years, and folks can stop talking about it, and you can kind of just exist on the periphery. Or when you burn a franchise, sign up to be a big piece, and then decide, you know what, I don't want to be a part of this. I don't like my role, and I'd like to leave tomorrow. And oh, by the way, I don't really want to get traded anywhere outside of one specific organization. I'm going to be difficult to deal with on that front. Guess what? Fan bases typically are going to feel some kind of way about that. So I say to DeWanna Bonner and her teammates, welcome to professional sports.
Yeah, and their head coach, Coach Tibbetts, actually, commented after the game. He said he didn't really have a problem with it. It's just how sports are, and I mean, it's true when you look at every other sport. Look at baseball. Bryce Harper and Juan Soto returning to where they left. It's like it wasn't received super well. LeBron James and Kevin Durant returning to Cleveland and Oklahoma City, respectively. I mean, they got booed. They got jerseys burnt. They got posters torn down. I mean, there was so much and so many things that happened to them. And it's just to me, it's a good sign for the league that people are in the stands and people are caring about and people are knowledgeable about what's going on with the league. It shows that they're in the spotlight more. They're more popular, because I think 2 years ago, I mean, this wouldn't even really be a news story, because no one would really be aware of the story. And now with Caitlin Clark and Paige Beckers and Angel Reese and all these great young players that we have in the league, it's really elevated the level of the WNBA to a spot where it's becoming more of a well-known league. And so I think on that sense, it's a good sign for the league that their fans are knowledgeable and aware of what's going on. But
they care.
They care, and it's a little ridiculous for members of the Mercury to be mad about that. And the one thing that I always say is, if you want to set up the opposing fans, win the game. And they weren't able to do that, and so to the winners go the spoils, and in this case, some booing of a player who left on some pretty controversial terms. And until we get more information on what happened with her leaving, I think it's pretty fair for that to be the response. And Mercury fans can show up to their game when they host the Fever and and boo Caitlin Clark or Leah Boston or someone like that if they want to get if they want some revenge. But it's really a non-story for me. But it's been, certain people just, it's new being in the limelight and having people that are knowledgeable about the sport, and it's just something that it's going to be an adjustment for some of the veterans of the league.
I count me in. I'm in on the controversy and some of the drama, of course, crosses certain lines. I'm not in on that, but I'm here for a little bit of the drama and controversy. I think it's good. Again, it's people care. So anyways, let's move on. Iowa football, we opened tonight talking about what fall camp questions do you have, and which position battles are you most intrigued by? Tonight is our call-in show, by the way. So if you want to jump in here, we've tossed it into the chat. You just jump on that StreamYard link. You'll wind up backstage, and then boom, we'll take you to the front of the line, front stage to hang out with us, whatever you want to jump into. If it's Iowa football, basketball, and I don't know, maybe even non-Hawkeyes related, though we try to keep it Iowa related here on Iowa Hawkeyes Primetime Live. So what about running back? How big of a position battle is this for you? I say to me that Kamari Moulton is a clear, cut and dry favorite in this running back race. I thought that was the case coming out of the open spring practice. Nothing since has dissuaded me or moved me off of that position, but I like the depth that they have at running back. So that would not rank altogether very highly for me in terms of, okay, hey, what are the biggest camp storylines? I feel like Kamari Moulton's the guy at running back. Now, if you wanted to talk me into, hey, who's battling for those number 2 and number 3 reps at running back, I could be talked into that as a big-time storyline for the Hawkeyes in camp. Not the biggest, but an interesting storyline nonetheless.
Yeah, for sure. And anytime that you're replacing, an All-American and Caleb Johnson, it's going to be a question mark of, how are they going to perform? But Iowa got some really good performances from that depth last season. Kamari Moulton and Jazz Patterson, whenever they were on the field, they still contributed very well, even in limited roles. Terrell Washington, another guy in that room who could compete for some playing time. But after that, the room does get a little thin. You get into some redshirt freshman and true freshman. Xavier Williams was a 3-star recruit in 2024. So he's a redshirt freshman this year, 5'10", 225 pounds. Nathan McNeil is a true freshman, 3-star recruit this year. So a couple of guys where, it's your 4th and 5th guys in a room, in a running back room. So they probably won't see the field too much barring an injury. But, I think Williams could be Xavier Williams could be a guy that could jump on the scene as a redshirt freshman this year. We've seen some freshmen and redshirt freshmen, contribute a lot to Iowa in the past. Caleb Johnson was one of those guys that, jumped in his freshman year and was able to make some plays. I go all the way back to Akram Wadley against Northwestern. I think he had like 200 rushing yards in that game as a freshman. So we've seen some really talented backs for Iowa, who have contributed. And I agree with Grant in the comments, not thin, just young. I think that's very true with that room. And, with young groups, there's a lot of room for growth and a lot of room to see kind of what you got. And I'm excited. I think Moulton is your starter pretty easily. I really like Kamari Moulton, but Jazz Patterson, Terrell Washington, and that's a decent room right there. And with an offensive line that's returning 2 all Big Ten guys and a third in Bo Stevens, who very well could be an all Big Ten guy this season, I think it's fair to expect that room to be pretty good this season.
Yeah, I'm excited to watch how it comes together. And again, what it looks like after Kamari Moulton, who I think is the clear number 1 there. Wide receiver. It's a position group for the Hawkeyes that fans are very excited about. And maybe, Zach, the first time in a little while or a long time that Hawkeye fans have been excited about the collective depth and potential star power of that group. what questions would you have there? I would say Reese Vanderzee, we're again hearing so much positive momentum for Reese Vanderzee. Kirk Ferentz, by the way, has been the leader, one of the conductors of that Reese Vanderzee hype train, which, typically Coach Ferentz is not one to just go hype a young player up. So if he's saying some positive things, I do put stock in that. But questions at wide receiver, I still, until I see it, how much of a jump and how quickly can it happen for Reese Vanderzee? Do you have a true 1-2 right there in terms of Jacob Gill and Reese Vanderzee that are big-time playmakers at wide receiver? And then beyond that, if it's not Jacob Gill, if it's not Reese Vanderzee, Sam Phillips, he's coming in from Chattanooga. What type of impact does he have for Iowa? Is he a starting caliber wide receiver in the Big Ten for the Hawkeyes? What does that look like? So I'm curious about, I guess, the wide receiver room beyond Jacob Gill, beyond Reese Vanderzee, and even in that with Reese Vanderzee, how big of a leap can he take? We're hearing that it could be a mighty leap if you're kind of buying the tea leaves that are out there, but how big of a leap can Reese Vanderzee take? And how quickly does that happen? Is he a number one wide receiver now? I mean, does he supplant Jacob Gill as the top wide receiver for this Hawkeyes team? I think that's an interesting question.
Yeah, I totally agree with you on that. And the wide receiver room at Iowa, as you mentioned, is not one that usually draws a whole lot of optimism. It's been a while since we've seen a duo of great receivers. I think if you go all the way back to Marvin McNutt and Darrell Johnson-Koulianos to find a duo of Iowa wide receivers that, were great at the same time. I mean, they've had really good receivers, Matt Vandenberg and Amir Smith-Marset and others since then. But, I'm a believer in Jacob Gill. I've kind of been on that hype train all season long. He was able to contribute last year with quarterback turmoil. I mean, 3 different quarterbacks. It was very clear that Iowa's scheme was run with Caleb Johnson, especially late in the season. I went back and watched some highlights from that Nebraska game last year, and just the amount. I mean, I think you could count on 2 hands the amount of pass attempts that Jackson Stratton had in that game. Like, they were just the passing game at the end of the season last year was basically non-existent, and so Jacob Gill was still able to contribute even with that last year. I'm a big believer in his ability. Reese Vanderzee is the big question mark. He's the guy that I think a lot of Iowa fans has the potential to be that number one guy. Being able to contribute quite a bit last year as a true freshman, even though he dealt with some injuries, and now heading into a sophomore season, he's getting a lot of praise, as you mentioned, from Kirk Ferentz and others within the room. So, what are you going to get from him? And then Sam Phillips is a wild card as well, transferring from Chattanooga. He had a good season last year for the Mocs, Chattanooga Mocs, one of my favorite names right there. He had a good season for them, but how does that translate? It's similar to Mark Gronowski. How does that translate to a bigger level? Now you're playing in the Big Ten. He's a smaller, more of a slot receiver. So is he going to be able to, win those matchups against Big Ten corners and nickels and not, who he was facing at Chattanooga. And then the depth of the room after that is a little questionable for me. Seth Anderson is kind of a known commodity, someone who's been here a couple of years. But, he had 5 catches for 105 yards last year, so he didn't really jump off the page too much there. And then a few more guys. Jariat Bowie is someone who had a decent game in that bowl game against Missouri, so he could be someone who gets some run this season, as well as Dayton Howard had that touchdown catch against Washington, which was his big play, and then KJ Parker as well, who's a redshirt freshman. So, I mean, they got a couple guys in the room, but if Gill and Vanderzee and Phillips struggle, that room is gonna have some issues. And so I think you're really relying on those 3 to carry the load at the top. And honestly, anything that you get from Anderson or Bowie or anyone else is really gravy for me. If I can get some good stuff from those top 3 receivers, I think Iowa's offense will be in a decent spot.
Yeah, I think to truly take a collective big leap forward. And you know that I've been repeatedly asking the question, hey, what does a Tim Lester leap look like in year two? What statistical measures are you going to use to grade that? And there's a number of different directions you can answer that. Probably the most notable is, okay, I want north of 30 points per game and total offense. You could get into however that yardage number, whatever that figure looks like for you. But I think another way that you can grade it within the, the passing game within the passing game is how many of these other younger receivers do they take a jump? You mentioned Jared Bowie. You mentioned Dayton Howard. I think if we're talking about a program that's showing signs of some legitimate long-term health, that they're healthy in the long run of this thing, then either Bowie or Howard, one of those guys will make a leap that we're talking about, a legitimate jump to where we don't say, okay, they caught, 12 passes. No, they went and they made some explosive plays at times. So with wide receiver, I think that's something that you're hoping to see. What about this? Caden Weegan, the Jet Award winner, right? He was electric for Iowa in the special teams department. What is a realistic goal for Caden Weegan in terms of being a pass catcher? He didn't have a lot of production there a season ago. What does that ceiling look like for you in your mind?
Yeah, that's a great question. It's one of those guys that you just want to get the ball to in space. It's kind of like when we had questions of, are they going to have a package for Cooper DeJean, within Iowa's offense? That was really dark times for Iowa's offense there, where we're talking about Cooper DeJean packages, as exciting as that would have been to see. But I think Caden Weegan is a guy where you kind of just want to get him the ball in space with some room to run. So I wonder if we get some if we get some jet sweeps, if we get some end arounds, some wide receiver screens potentially for Caden Weegan, where he can catch the ball and have a blocker or two in front of him and see if he can get to work there. I think those are more realistic options for him this season. I don't think they're gonna have Caden Weegan running slants or curls or anything like that on a super consistent basis. Running a big route tree. I just don't know if that's quite in his arsenal. But get him in space, get him some blockers, and he's super fast. He's super fast. When he gets out into the open field, there's not many in the Big Ten. They're going to be able to catch him, and so I don't want to say like gimmick plays, but jet sweeps, end arounds, wide receiver screens, things like that. Can you get him the ball potentially with the head start and let him go to work and try and catch the defense off guard? I do think, though, the unfortunate part about him not being used on offense too much during his career or during his time at Iowa is, defenses are going to call it out pretty early on when he's on the field that he's probably getting the ball. He's not someone who is probably going to be running too many routes or, into block super often. And so I wonder if you play all your cards right there, our defense is going to be able to be like, Weegan's on the field now. We're going to make sure we pay extra attention to him. He might be getting the ball here on a gimmicky play or a screen or something like that. So, if Iowa wants to establish those plays, they'll probably have to just play him more on offense, but then that takes away time and routes for one of your starters, a Van Der Zee or a Gill or a Phillips, and I kind of want those guys on the field as much as we can get this season. So it's really a give and take with the Weegan. You want him to have the ball, you want him to be a playmaker, but then it's also a question of if he plays more offense, is he still as effective in the kick return game? It's a lot of give and take, but I think in small doses it could be effective, but you might be showing your hand to opposing defenses, especially veteran defensive coordinators that have been around the block.
Yeah, no, that's a reasonable point that you make, that until he shows that, look, he can go run more traditional routes that aren't, hey, toss it to me in the flat and screen pass for me, jet sweep and around, then maybe it's a little too predictable when Weegen's on the football field. I hadn't really thought about that, but that's a fair point that you make. And if other options are better, then that's not a bad thing for Iowa either. If Caden Weegen is a terrific return specialist, and that's kind of what he is in terms of if you want to say special teams to offense, if that's what he provides for you offensively is getting you short fields or maybe breaking one in the return game, then so be it. Let's go with the other options that are more effective. But I just think wide receiver collectively that, beyond, I think the established top two in Jacob Gill, in Reese Vanders, the perceived top two, there's some questions to be answered there in fall camp and beyond. Seth Anderson, can he emerge? The young guys, Bowie, the young guys that aren't as young anymore, Bowie and Howard. KJ Parker's a name that we haven't mentioned, but that's somebody that I think Hawkeye fans are excited about. Corner's a big-time position battle, it sounds like, right, for Iowa. There's maybe a couple of front runners there, but that's an interesting position that I think you have to look at. Tight end. So what about those position groups? We'll get into those in just a moment, but want to say hi again to everybody as we cross that midway threshold tonight. This is Iowa Hawkeyes Primetime Live. We've tossed into the chat this evening the link for you to jump in if you want to. It is an opportunity for you tonight. We call it our call-in show where you could jump in and chat with us, Hawkeye football, basketball, you name it. But Matthew in the chat has chimed in. I see more of a rotation defensively this year. Offensively, more drives down the field. Punter should be better also. It should be a really good year. More of a rotation defensively. So, Matthew, what are you talking about there? Just defensive line, linebackers, like more beyond just, hey, Harrell and Shire at the top, if that's 1-2 in the depth chart. Corner, are you talking that we could see a three-man weave right there with TJ Hall, with Deshaun Lee, with Shaheed Barrows, who you brought in, and maybe there's another name that enters that mix? What do you think there with a rotation defensively? What exactly are you talking about there? I do think that Zach Reese-Dakin will continue to take a step forward. He had a solid freshman season, but I think he will be better in terms of kind of more of the pinpoint accuracy part of the punting game. So I think that's in the special teams department, something to be excited about. I know that's not, the most, exciting.
Punting is winning, Josh. Punting is winning.
Punting is winning. Where the heck is my T-shirt? Get it to me right now.
Oh, yeah. I mean, Reese-Dakin set the bar pretty high last year for a freshman punter. He was really good. And so, I have no doubt that he'll continue to be better. Drew Stevens, really great story right there. Someone who, had some struggles, and just like me right there, and lost his job for a little bit, and was able to come back and bounce back last year, and made some big kicks to win some games. And so, that's someone that you feel pretty confident about with your special teams game. But I think the rotation on defense, like Matthew mentioned, I mean, your defensive line will be able to rotate. Guys like Jonah Pace and Kenneth Merriweather are guys that could be in the rotation. Even the younger Epinesa brother, the 5-star. Yosei is someone that I think could. I mean, he's just a guy who's so talented that might just force his way onto the field just because, it's someone that you want to play. But I think that's someone that they could try and redshirt as well, especially with a lot of seniors that you're going to lose off of that line this year, with Herkett and Graves and Llewellyn on that line, and even Pittman as well. That's an entire line of seniors right there. And so they're going to be replacing a lot next year. So I think that'll be Epinesa's year to really break on the scene. But speaking of Epinesa, I saw a stat that Iowa hasn't had a player with double-digit sacks in a season since AJ Epinesa. I believe his last year here before he went to the NFL is. I'll turn the question back to you, Josh. Do you think that's something that we could see this year? Do we see someone like Herkett, Llewellyn, or even potentially Aaron Graves on the inside be able to reach the double-digit sack marker this season?
I think that both Llewellyn and Herkett will absolutely have a chance at it. Llewellyn feels like he's primed to just keep taking a step forward. I would love if Aaron Graves on the interior makes a run at it, because I just think that, generally speaking, defenses that get pressure from the interior, those are the tough ones for quarterbacks to deal with. Tom Brady, so many times over the years when he was asked, hey, what's difficult for you to have to deal with? What's the most difficult thing to deal with? And it was when they got a defensive tackle that could just go win one-on-ones, the 1-3 technique, boom, get down into the backfield. So if Aaron Graves can be that guy for the Hawkeyes, just whether we're talking about he reaches double-figure sacks, if it's Llewellyn, if it's Herkett, just him providing that consistent interior pressure. And we'll see, Pittman, some of these other names on the interior of this defensive line for the Hawkeyes. If some of those other names can emerge, that would be a really good sign, I just think, for Iowa collectively defensively. But I'll say yes, that Llewellyn is the guy that goes and snaps it and, in a positive way, snaps it and gets double-figure sacks. That'd be great to see.
On the record right there, Max Llewellyn with double-digit sacks. Well, we need someone to clip that so we can come back to it at the end of the season and see. I think Herkett could be the guy to do that. He really came out last season and was super impressive, and now returning to Iowa once again. But if they can get pressure with 4, I mean, that's always something that's huge, because it allows you to keep 7 back in coverage. And I think Iowa will have the chance to get consistent pressure by rushing 4, which would be big for their defense this year, especially with those questions at the linebacker room. And the cornerback question is a great one as well. If you want to transition to that with Hall, TJ Hall was on that Shrine Bowl 1,000 list as well. So that's someone that is viewed by some people as a player who could rise to an NFL caliber this season with a strong senior season. And then I would mention Deshaun Lee as well, and Shaheed Barrows, the transfer from South Dakota. I think those 3 are your main guys who are going to be on the field. But what's the depth behind that? If there's an injury, who's going to step up? Is a guy like Jalen Watson, someone right there, Rashad Godfrey, as well as someone that is kind of in that room as well. So there's a lot of questions about the depth of that room if there's an injury there. But I guess it's just kind of always how it is. Iowa's had some pretty deep cornerback rooms in the past, but I saw that this was the first year in a while that they didn't have a Jim Thorpe Award preseason nominee on the list. This is a Iowa program that's won so many Big Ten Defensive Back of the Year awards and a couple of Jim Thorpes recently, and so it's a room that the rest of the country thinks is unproven, and they're right about that. And so can they come out and prove those people wrong is my question mark. And then the depth behind Hall, Lee, and Barrows is really interesting.
Is there a big-time star back there? Xavier Wampa is supposed to be that guy coming in, right? But he hasn't been that type of player so far. That's been one of the items, actually, Zach, that I've come back to quite a bit on this program, Iowa Hawkeyes Primetime Live. Iowa at the voice of college football right here every Monday and Thursday at 6 o'clock. Who can emerge as that big-time star in the defensive backfield? And to your point, it feels like the Hawkeyes always have one of those guys. If it's Riley Moss, if it's Cooper DeJean, and you guys know that we can go further back than that. I'm not just going to list name after name, but they're kind of maybe without that player at the moment, at least going in based on some of those preseason watch lists. So, no, I think that's a legitimate question. If you want to drill it beyond, hey, what does the battle at corner look like? What does the depth beyond corner and strong and free safety look like? Just who's going to be the star in that defensive backfield, I think, is a legitimate question for Iowa. What about tight end? DJ Vonamy, from walk-on to scholarship player. I thought that was an awesome story recently. But how big of a question, how big of a concern is the tight end position group for Iowa going into this thing?
Yeah, DJ Vandermeer from walk on to scholarship to potential big playing time this season, because Iowa's a little thin at the tight end room, in terms of established talent. Addison Ostrenga is the perceived starter heading into this season, and I like Ostrenga. I like his talent, but he has yet to prove it consistently on the field that he can be a really good caliber, starting caliber tight end. And Zach Ortworth, I know we talked about that on the last time I joined the show, but he's got like 11 career receptions, and 4 of them are over 30 yards or something like that. Like, he's been a big play machine so far during his Iowa career, but can he be more consistent? Can he play a big role in that tight end room? And then Vandermeer's in that next group of guys that are pretty unproven. They are a bunch of redshirt freshmen and guys that really didn't see the field at all last season. And so they're going to, at least one of those guys, if not more, are going to be called upon at some point this season, whether it's due to injury, whether it's due to some underperformance. It's just it's the grind of the college football season. You have a big roster for a reason. And, it's clear that someone on the Iowa coaching staff, whether it's Kirk Ferentz, whether it's Tim Lester or both, view Vandermeer as a real guy, as a guy that could contribute here. They wouldn't put him on scholarship if they didn't think that he could, play a big role in his career at Iowa. And it might have to start this season, depending on what they get from Ostrenga and Ortworth. But then, going forward, Ostrenga is a senior, Ortworth is a junior this year, so they're going to be losing one of those guys to graduation. And so it's really a question of, can those guys rise to the level of the Iowa tight end room that is tight end U? I don't really care what other schools have to say. Miami, Notre Dame, if state claims. Nebraska weirdly staked a claim this offseason. One of their tight ends, said that they were tight end U, and I don't really understand where that came from. But this is a team and a program that develops tight ends, almost better than no other program in the entire country. So if you're going to have a position on the roster that you have question marks, I'd prefer it to be tight end, because I have faith in the coaching staff to get that spot figured out. But there are some question marks there about what you're going to get from him, especially with a new quarterback and a new system. A tight end is a quarterback's best friend, someone that can, be a safety blanket underneath, who can stay in the block. So it's going to be big for Iowa to figure out that tight end rotation. Are Ostrenga and Ortworth those guys, or is someone like a DJ Vandermeer, going to be a big contributor? I think one of those guys of those redshirt freshmen will be, and I would not surprise me at all at the end of the season if we're talking about Iowa's tight end room being in a great spot heading into 2026, because one or two of those guys emerged as real talent.
Yeah, no, I think that is absolutely at play, and probably that's the most likely outcome here. Is even if it's not right out of the chute at Iowa State, early in Big Ten play, that by season's end you look back and you say either Ostrenga or Ortworth have really taken a significant step forward toward the type of Iowa tight end play that we're accustomed to. And I got to say, I'm a little bit caught by the allure of the big play from Ortworth. So the fact that he's been able to put that together so often, I think that's caught my attention a little bit. Now, can you go, as you said, be a little bit more consistent? And maybe we'll have answers on the tight end position group before we get out of fall camp. Who's really kind of emerging there is interesting. So we've got 15 some odd minutes or so, and I know you want to talk a little Iowa basketball before we get out of here. The blue chip ratio, I had that on the docket because somebody mentioned it from the last show, and so I guess just to quickly pay off that tease, we can kick it around. Somebody, let's see here. Joseph Wolf chimed in and was asking if we'd ever heard of the blue chip ratio developed by Bud Elliott. So if you've not heard of the blue chip ratio, basically it says that teams that can win the national championship, they have 50% of the roster or more comprised of blue chip recruits. Okay, what are blue chip recruits? Those are 4- and 5-star recruits. So teams that can go win a national championship, there's 18 of them, and it doesn't include Iowa because the Iowa program, well, it's more around that 20% threshold of blue chip recruits. Do you, number one, I think you got to buy into the blue chip ratio in terms of winning national championships because the statistics say it's proven. But for Iowa, does that matter to you, the blue chip ratio with the Hawkeyes?
And I think it does in a sense. As you mentioned, most of the national champions from the last 20 years have had that blue chip ratio over 50%. And so, their rosters are stacked full of 4- and 5-star talents. And that's just not Iowa. Iowa doesn't really recruit like that, in part because the state of Iowa is not usually home to a horde of 4- and 5-star recruits. And that's really where you win your battles is there. You have the occasional one from in state, like a Xavier Wampa was a 5-star recruit, or a Tristan Wirfs was I believe a high 4-star, maybe even a 5-star recruit from right here in the state. And so every now and again you'll get one, but the state of Iowa isn't really abundant with a whole ton of 4- and 5-star recruits. And when you go out of state, you're competing with a bunch of other really talented schools who have a better pedigree with those 4- and 5-star recruits than Iowa. But Iowa's always been a developmental program. I love going back to, previous recruiting classes and being like, oh, that guy was a 3-star. Like Desmond King was a 2-star, I believe, when he came to Iowa, and we know what happened with him. Like Iowa does a lot of really great work with less talent. I'll say 2- and 3-star recruits, are technically less talented according to scouting rankings, but those players can go on to be the most talented players. Look at Iowa's tight end room and guys like George Kittle and TJ Hawkinson and players like that. And so I was, at least under Kirk Ferentz, this could change when he retires and a new coach comes in. But under Kirk Ferentz, they're always going to be a developmental program, and I'm fine with that. But I do wonder, with Beth Getz now in charge of the athletics department, when Kirk Ferentz hangs it up, whether that's at the end of this season, next season, however much longer that Kirk has left, is she going to go out and get the Ben McCollum for the Iowa football team, the Jan Jensen for the Iowa football team, someone that's a lot younger who has high expectations, can recruit really well, is going to be able to come in and try and bring in more of those blue chip prospects. I definitely think that's something that they could look into, and it would not surprise me in the slightest if under Beth Getz they look for their next young head coach who's going to come in and really try and bring some blue chip recruits to Iowa.
And somebody that just has a different vision that, I don't want to pigeonhole this program into, we get, folks that maybe other teams don't want, and we find that diamond in the rough and we develop them. We're going to do that, but we're also going to go be aggressive and get more blue chippers as well. And if you get to that point, who knows? Maybe we're talking about an Iowa program down the line that can more consistently get into the college football playoff. Obviously, you're trying to get in for the first time right now, but consistently get into that thing and then make routine runs at Big Ten championships and larger prizes like obviously a national championship. Could that be something down the road? How does the revenue share era, how does that impact? Does that change Kirk Ferentz and this Iowa staff's approach at all? I think that's a long-term, interesting question to ask. I think I know the answer is probably not a whole heck of a lot, but, until that gets proven over time, then we can at least dream, right, that maybe we're talking about a few more blue chippers down the road. Okay, Logan Jones, we got a couple of cuts from Big Ten Media Days before we get out of here. So tonight, in case you're just jumping in, Iowa Hawkeyes Primetime Live. He is Zach Heine. I'm Josh Elmer. We are a part of the duo here at Iowa at the Voice of College Football, Iowa Hawkeyes Primetime Live. And you can also read a lot of our written work, HawkeyesWire.com. I would encourage you to just make that, just like this, make that your first morning writing stop, HawkeyesWire.com, and make this your first viewing stop or listening stop every morning, the voice of college football at the VOCFB. Logan Jones from Big Ten Media Days had a lot of interesting things to say. And let's start here on, Zach, why Logan Jones came back.
I think if you don't see any growth from last year to this year, then I'm doing things wrong, right? It can be in every aspect of my game, run game, pass game. There's little details in every single aspect of my game that I can get better at, and I have an opportunity now. I have 12 guaranteed opportunities. God forbid any injuries or anything like that, but to go out there and showcase how I've gotten better, right, and be consistent with that. I think consistency is the biggest thing, and to be able to show up on Saturday, consistently do these things, I think it'll put me in a different position this next draft than last year for sure.
There you go. Okay, so Logan Jones says, yeah, I think I can get better this season. That is encouraging to hear. Not shocking. I mean, look, you make the decision to come back. I would hope that you feel that there is still growth to be had in your game. And Logan Jones, at least, is saying, yeah, there's room for me to get better.
Yeah, and that's encouraging to hear from a guy that was a pretty unanimous, first team All Big Ten player last year. Room to get better. He was already a great center last year, and so excited to see what the jump is for him. I think he's a guy that would have been drafted last year, probably a day 3, early day 3, late day 2 pick. He's a guy that could, with a really strong 2025 season, I think honestly could catapult his way into early day 2, potentially a late round 1 lineman, kind of like where Tyler Linderbaum went at the end of the first round of the Baltimore Ravens, something and that range for him. And that's huge money right there. A jump from a day 3 up to round 1 or round 2. So, with a strong season, I think he could definitely be up there. And, if he's the anchor of that offensive line and plays as well as he did last year, it bodes really well for, the rest of that Iowa offense.
Seth just jumped in. What's up, Hawk fans? Happy Thursday. Yes, the weekend is almost here. We almost made it. Great to have you in here, Seth. So we're revisiting some of what Logan Jones had to say from Big Ten Media Days. And Zach, it's interesting to think back all of the different quarterbacks that have been a part of Logan Jones' time as the Hawkeyes starting center and his, obviously transition from defense to offense and following that Tyler Linderbaum path. But at any rate, here's what he had to say about that journey with all these different quarterbacks and the man that's going to lead the way now with Mr. Mark Gronowski.
It's been a lot of hands up under me. That's for sure. It's been interesting. Just how many quarterbacks we've had. It's been an interesting situation for me. Just times kind of changed. But every one of those guys I've respected a lot. They've all been great guys. And, college football changing, transfer portal and all this. They've seized opportunities elsewhere, which I completely understand. But it presents opportunities for new guys like Mark, to come in and do something special. And I'm really excited for it because Mark fits our mold perfectly, right? What it means to play Iowa football, and I'm excited for that because I feel like it's hard to find guys like that anymore, right? Guys that truly fit the mold of what it takes to play football at Iowa. And it's not about money. It's not about any of that. It's about playing football, and that's what he cares about, and he shows that day to day with his actions. It's definitely been an interesting situation, but I truly am excited for this last year. Your approach, how you approach everything, right? Whether it be a meeting, a practice, going to the training room, right? How do you approach that so that's showing up on time? Your attitude, I think that's the biggest one. And then your demeanor, right? How you show up, what you look like. Are you coming in slouched and tired? Are you ready to attack the workout regardless of how you feel? I think that's the biggest thing, and he's shown up every single day since he's got there, ready to work and ready to earn every single thing in the future, and he's done a great job of that, and I think that's why he's one of the better leaders on the team.
What grabbed you there from Logan Jones, Big Ten Media Days, talking about QB1, Mr. Mark Gronowski?
Yeah, I think, it'd be a fun trivia game to try and name every Iowa quarterback that started a game with Logan Jones on the roster. I think probably up near 6 or 7 at the very least, if you want to count Gronowski. But I mean, it just speaks further to what Kirk Ferentz mentioned at Big Ten Media Days, which is really the character of Mark Gronowski. I mean, we're just seeing him get on the field for team practice now. He's been dealing with that injury, but the character and being a leader, and that's a big thing for a quarterback, being able to control and rally a locker room when you have a guy at that position that the rest of the team believes in, the rest of the team is able to follow. That it means a lot, and not to speak ill of former Iowa quarterbacks, over the past couple of years, but was there a lot of faith in those guys, from the rest of the team? I mean, they won't say it obviously, but deep down, like, was there a lot of faith that they're going to be able to go out and win a game with some of those guys at quarterback? I'm not sure, and it just seems like Gronowski has come in and really grabbed the locker room and become a leader right away, which is really good to see for him. And now he's out there at fall practices and being on the field with his teammates for really the first time in a sanctioned session. And it's really exciting to see, that and what he's going to be able to bring to Iowa this year. But, being a leader in that locker room at the quarterback position is huge. And it seems like from what Logan Jones and Kirk Ferentz said, that Mark Gronowski has been able to do that already in his short time at Iowa.
Spencer Petras, Alex Padilla, Deacon Hill,
3.
Cade McNamara.
That's 4.
Jackson Stratton.
Yep.
Brendan Sullivan. Mark Gronowski.
Yeah, 7 right there.
And
I don't think
there
we
a
missed
couple
anyone
names that I missed?
Yeah, I don't think we missed anyone. If people want to chime in the chat and let us know if Josh missed one right there, maybe, but hopefully not. But a guy like Hank Brown could be added to that list this year. But you hope that Mark Gronowski is able to play, all 12 regular season games, potentially, any further games from there. But it's been a ride for Logan Jones in his time at Iowa, and just the amount of different QBs that he's gotten to play with.
And let's see, what else can I share here with you? The left tackle battle. This we teased this earlier, so we better pay it off. Zach, you'll find every once in a while I give a good old-fashioned radio tease and do not pay it off. So don't do that. That's poor broadcasting 101 for you, okay? Logan Jones on the battle of left tackle.
You have a favorite?
Do I have a favorite?
Yeah.
I do not.
Okay.
They're all my favorite. I think you can even throw one more in there with Cannon Leonard. Like, there is a legit competition for that left tackle spot, and whoever has the best fall camp is going to be that guy. And whoever you put in, like, from those 4 guys, like I said, I'm fairly confident they're going to do a great job, right? So to be able to have those 4 guys compete, we're going to get a really good left tackle because of that. And I'm super excited for it because those guys have all worked so hard to get to where they are, and they're going to continue to do that. And fall camp presents a great opportunity because every single one of those guys wants to play at a high level too. And to just see their growth this summer, and one guy in particular, like Cannon Leonard, he is one of the best leaders that I've seen, especially as a young guy. Not a lot of people say that, but I truly believe it. Just the way he operates and where he's come, like where he was to now, I'm really excited for him and Trevor, right? And I mean, I'm excited for all of them, but Cannon Leonard, man, I'm excited for him especially because he's a younger guy, but he'll get an opportunity for sure.
Do they each bring something maybe different to the table?
Yeah, they all bring something different for sure. Just the way they play. But I think consistently they're all pretty physical guys for the most part. It'll just be about consistency in fall camp.
That, by the way, other voice you hear, Elliot Clough, Hawkeye insider, now a part of that holy trinity over there alongside David Eichhold and Sean Bach. Great trio of reporters right there. Really good coverage. I would encourage you, of course, to go to HawkeyesWire.com. But if you're not going there, then Iowa 247 is about as good as it gets as well. Let's see. My man, Seth, it is so great to see you tonight in the chat. You're filling it up, baby. This is what I'm talking about. This is what we're looking for here on Iowa Hawkeyes Primetime Live. Just bang, bang, bang in that chat. Seth says the quarterback room is the best it's been in a long time for Iowa. How long? I don't know. And says, I'm hearing Hank Brown is definitely the backup. The arm is legit, needs to learn the offense. Very positive about the offensive line, by the way, as well, Zach. Offensive line is deep, one of the best in the country. Go Hawks.
Yeah, go Hawks indeed. And I think it was really interesting to hear Logan Jones bring up Cannon Leonard unprovoked multiple times in that answer. Like he mentioned Jack Doetzler a little bit and Trevor Lauk, but the fact that he brought up Cannon Leonard without being asked multiple times says that he's been really impressing this Iowa coaching staff in some of these spring and summer workouts. And I mentioned earlier, 6'9", tackle, redshirt sophomore, just a big guy. Could he be the answer at left tackle? Potentially. I think most people would have said Doetzler or Lauk are kind of in pole position for that left tackle spot. But, Cannon Leonard could be one of those sneaky underrated guys that we're talking about at the end of the season being, Iowa's offensive line has their left tackle for the next couple of years with Cannon Leonard. Yeah, 6'9" Cannon.
That's a great nickname. That you had me at 6'9". It's like, man, that is a beast of a man right there. And I was not surprised to revisit and find out that he also was a basketball player as well. It's like 6'9", you better be on a basketball court with that kind of size. Iowa is actually loaded on the offensive line and defensive line. That's the hope, Seth. I mean, right? You should have one of the best defensive lines, we think, in the Big Ten and maybe nationally if some of those names that we don't know about or haven't totally seen yet out there, if they can really be difference makers too. Collectively, you should be in a pretty good place with that defensive line. Offensive line, I'm a little bit more wait and see just because, look, one of those is left tackle. The interior of the offensive line, Peeper, we've heard so much good about. Logan Jones, obviously, and Stevens coming back. You got a lot of experience and snap counts under your belt there. So I feel good about the interior for Iowa, but left tackle, I'm gonna just wait a smidge right there. I like the competition, love some of the names that are involved, but look, it's left tackle, and until we see that is fortified and settled out there, that's going to be a legitimate cause for concern. That's got to be one of the big camp questions. Zach, any final thoughts before we bid everybody adieu for a Thursday night?
I'm just super happy that Iowa football is almost back. I mean, we're less than a month away, and it's going to be a really fun season. Iowa gets to host, 3 college football playoff teams from last year at Kinnick Stadium, so those games should be rocking and wild over there at Kinnick, and they get to go to Iowa State to try and win back that Cy-Hawk trophy. And just it should be a really fun season. Mark Gronowski, I think, is really the shining bright hope for Iowa football fans, that they might be able to see an offense crack 30 points per game for the first time, and who knows how long it's been. And just the odd optimism right now. It's kind of like before baseball opening day. Hope springs eternal, and fall practice for all these college football programs. Unless you're Northwestern or Purdue, then you're probably just waiting for basketball season. But I'm really excited for what Iowa might be able to do this season, and that Tim Lester year 2 jump with Mark Gronowski, like that is going to be the thing where we're talking about one make or break item for Iowa football this year. Like it's going to be that offense. If they take a step, I don't think double-digit wins is out of the question for Iowa.
Going to be a great year for Iowa sports. Seth, ding, ding, ding. I mean, that's what we're all expecting and hoping that can be the case, because, look, you mentioned some of those programs that it's like you got the Kansas treatment, right? It's like we're just counting down. Mm-hmm. Though Kansas thinks that Jayhawks think that they're going to be, a more competitive on a routine basis in football, and they think that, with Daniels back, that they're going to be pretty good this season. The Kansas treatment where you're just counting down to basketball. Iowa does not have that feeling, though. There's great excitement for men's basketball, for women's basketball. Baseball, though, you had some defections. You've had some interesting portal ads. So Iowa wrestling, of course, as always, it has the makings building of, and if you start with Iowa football really delivering with that one shining hope in Mr. Ganowski, it has, the makings of maybe a great Iowa athletics year. And let's hope that's the case. Before we get out, just a couple of final announcements here. Would love it if you consider buying a super thanks, which directly supports myself, Zach, the team, and Iowa at the voice of college football, Iowa Hawkeyes Primetime Live. It's just that little heart and the dollar sign figure if you go looking for it. Other than that, every Monday night, Thursday nights, we're live with you, Iowa Hawkeyes Primetime Live. Of course, Corey and Mark, they've got their Tuesday night show, and I think they've got a Big Ten show. I will need talking points, gentlemen. I apologize. I don't have the schedule in front of me when you guys are live. I probably should research that, but you can find all of their content here and across the Voice of College Football channels at the VOCFB. Those guys, really just the channel in general. Probably just search your favorite teams. If you're not an Iowa fan, but you stumbled upon this, search your team with the Voice of College Football, and we probably got you covered anymore. It's a network that just keeps growing and growing and exploding, and it's going to be so fun in football season, man. I can't believe that we are 30 days away from Hawkeye football. Let's freaking go, baby. Zach, hey, great job, man. Fun getting to hang with you. So happy. If you missed it off the top, Zach officially a part of the Iowa Hawkeyes Primetime Live, the Iowa at the Voice of College Football team. He's going to be hot and heavy with a lot of the post-game coverage, which, Zach, just between you and I, little off-air, on-air discussion right here. Dude, there's nothing more fun than post-game coverage in written content, in broadcasting. There's nothing more fun, man, than getting to do a post-game show with fans. So you're going to do an awesome job of it. Folks are going to dig you being here at Iowa at the Voice of College Football, and you're just going to have so much fun, man. You're going to crush it. I'll be a part of a lot of that, I'm sure, too, when I can. But at any rate, yes, Seth, share the good word if you don't mind, man. Tell your friends to come hang out with us on Mondays, on Thursday nights. We get rolling right at or shortly thereafter, 6 o'clock. Iowa at the Voice of College Football, Iowa Hawkeyes Primetime Live on Mondays, on Thursdays. The goal, Seth, is that you won't be hanging out by yourself in the chat long term, but we're growing this thing. It's slow and steady. We're kind of the tortoise right now, but we're going to get there, baby. I promise you. I promise you. Well, I guess until next Monday night, Zach, great job, my friend. For everybody, thanks for hanging with us. Go Hawks, and so long until Monday, everybody.